Neil, can you turn your mic up a little bit more? Because I'm at max speaker and you're still a little bit quiet.
I'll even bring it
Oh, perfect.
over here. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. DJ.
Yes, get you out of the way. So I'm going to start off. Yeah. Over there. I'll just hold it from that. So that chair is from the Heinemann Settlement School in Heinemann, Kentucky. The school was established in 1902. Basically the first school in Eastern Kentucky, period. It is all handmade. You can really tell the rungs are hand cut on a draw knife. I think they may have had a lathe about when this was made. The back. Here we go. Back pieces, if I'm remembering right, they probably cut them on a draw knife and they just bent them while it was green and held them until it dried. You can see it's a little smaller than the other chairs because this was for a school, and in that time, basically I said it was one of the first schools in Eastern Kentucky because due to geography, nobody could go to school. To go 5 miles could take you all day. So the idea of a settlement school where during the cooler months of the year, students would just go and live there, that cropped up. So we've been going to the settlement school for how many years? 25, and doing various wood stuff. So this chair was a salvage. They had a bunch that the seats were blown out. We redid the seat, cleaned it up, and that's how we came in possession of it. There's a variety of other chairs that we have made, or we have recovered with hickory bark. And let's see, I'm going to switch to the tablet.
Neil, is this okay if I ask you questions as you go along?
Absolutely. No, that'd be fine.
Do you know how old that chair, how long ago it would have been made? And do you think they were using hickory bark back then, or was it oak split?
My guess is 1930 to 1940. Mm-hmm. All the ones that I'm aware of in Eastern Kentucky are hickory, just because that's a convenient tree to work with. So okay. I don't think oak. And normally the craftsmen that I work with say, yeah, a hickory seat will last a lifetime.
Yeah.
But that's not a lifetime of students.
Yeah. Yeah.
So students a little bit rougher.
And that black chair next to it, that's Hitchcock chair?
That's a Stickley chair from my uncle. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Stickley. Wow.
I didn't totally rearrange the living room for this. If we get time, this is a Jack Daniels chair that was made from a Jack Daniels barrel, and I can talk. That's totally non-traditional, although we use some traditional techniques. We can talk about some of the weird tricks that are involved in making a chair out of a whiskey barrel, but that wasn't my focus for tonight. All right, so let me grab this guy.
So, why don't you check?
Let me get you in here, Neil. Hold on.
Thank you. I'm just going to go ahead downstairs. We're just going to head down to the back. So this is a little more typical. This is the kind of stuff that we've made in Kentucky. Let's see. I think these are walnut, and the rungs are oak, and the top is hickory bark. And so that's pretty typical. And let's see. So let me talk about, so the process I've learned. I hope I can hear folks. If people have questions, I hope you can hear.
Yep, we can hear you good.
I should make sure folks are still.
Absolutely. Hear you great.
So the general
Me too.
process we go through is cut a log to length, or roughly the length that we're after, and split it. I've started splitting this one, so tonight we'll have kind of a reveal to see if this actually works. Got a little more to go. Well, this is why when Julia Child does something, she mixes up the souffle, she puts it in the oven, and then she pulls out a cooked souffle. This one's going to take a couple more whacks to split open. But eventually we split it, and we get to split it again, probably. At that point, we'd use one of these. And go through that process to split that apart. Now, probably a good time to see if everyone's hearing me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Folks still hearing me?
Yep, we can hear.
Yes?
Loud and clear.
Yep.
Fair enough. Oh, well, let me see if I can turn my volume up. I have to turn my volume up. Now we're cooking. All right, fair enough. So once we got it split, that's when we have to get the schnitzel bank out. Let's see what my screen looks like. Okay, pretty good. This is a replica of a Swiss shaving horse that I made. And all the pieces just are held together with pins. So we take this out, we take them out, we take the key out at the bottom, the whole thing comes apart. And it's basically a great big set of pliers. So I'll stick something in it. Pull out my draw knife. when you hit a knot, it is a little fussy. Sometimes you can just get a good run at it. The difference between this and a woodworking vise, as you can see, I can pretty quickly adjust. Adjust the angle.
So, Neil, a question.
Yes.
So is that green wood that you're working with, or does it get dry? Do you allow it to dry first?
Well, it's kind of some of both. Most of the work I've seen, you don't have time to dry because obviously winter's going to set in and it's going to get cold and you've got to finish things. You can't be, if you do it right the day that you've cut it, it's way too green. So probably it's going to take a couple of weeks. I have seen people that are doing carving, they will use green wood, but every day once they're done carving, they'll put it in a cooler so it doesn't dry out too fast. So for instance, got over here. Yeah, this is, that's some walnut that was in the neighborhood, and I picked them up, and 2 days after the tree was cut, there's just no way I could get a chisel into it. It just bounced right off.
Mm-hmm.
A week later, 2 weeks later, then yeah, it's starting to get to where it'll pop apart. And this is the same piece, this a piece off the same tree. And if I had a piece of wood to wrap it with, I could punch those, I could finish putting those wedges in, and I could pop it right apart. So I'd say a couple of weeks is important. Now here's a log of river birch that we took down at church a week ago, and it was about 250 pounds when we took it down, and I think it's actually lost some weight because of drying out. So there's a trade-off. I think the longer you wait, the more possibility it is for it to start checking. So
did you, I mean, do you have, I mean, how did you saw it into planks? I mean, do you guys have like a saw miser or something like that, or?
Well, that's getting off the track, and I'm happy to talk about that. Probably you wouldn't see much of that happening in traditional work.
Well, that's why I ask.
Traditionally, somebody would have split, and once you start, you know, if you get a log, once you started the kind of split along the grain. So, you know, right here, I end up with a pretty good flat. If I was making a bench, I'd have to get an adze out and just spend a couple days with an adze smoothing out that surface. If I was, if doing something like this, making a shaving horse, you'd have to use an adze after you split it. And you'd have to hope that it's split straight. Now, more to the question, how did I do this? Well, I used the handy Alaskan sawmill.
Wow, that's awesome.
So what you've got is, and it's not traditional, but you know what? After you've done this enough and broken your back enough, you'll tend to cheat. So you basically clamp a chainsaw blade, and this thing slides up and down to adjust the height. So what you do is once you got the log laying down, you scab a good 2x6, a straight 2x6 onto it, set the height, and then this thing just scoots along, cuts the planks. And let me see if I can get a close shot at this. It's a really good cut.
That's
I probably have to take, I'll have to plane a 1/16 of an inch off to get to furniture grade. You can get, now this is just an old chainsaw I had laying around. I did get a slightly bigger bar, and you can get what's a ripping chain. A rip chain's got a little different profile. You probably can't, I don't think you can see it. The angle on the teeth is a little straighter. And so you can get a ripping chain, $100 for this. If you've got a chainsaw and a rip chain, are $120. And yeah, you can cut this kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
And this was free. I mean, this was free wood they were getting rid of at church. So I'm big on free wood. Okay. So yeah, everything we're going with is, everything we work with is somewhat green, but somewhat not. Now, at some point, we get the leg shapes that we want to have. And the nice thing about this is you really cannot hurt yourself with a draw knife. There's no way. The blade's behind your fingers, and you're really just planing. The other nice thing, you may not be able to see it, is if you do it smooth, you can end up with almost a perfectly smooth finish. Now, especially on oak, once it's a little bit closer to dry, you can get a finish that you don't have to sand. It's that clean. Now, the downside is something like this. You can hit a knot, and Lord knows what's going to happen. Well, that's how you could hurt yourself with a draw knife. Or you can see it, like here, it'll dig out. Okay, so I haven't played with that enough. So we get the legs the way we want, get the rungs the way we want it. And we'd have to drill out with one of these. These things will kill you. They will really wear you out. Then once we fit it together, the other caveat would be when you're making these, the the piece that goes into this, you want to actually make the sides skinnier than the hole so that it's a tight fit in this direction, but it's a loose fit in this direction so that you're not pushing it apart. Most of the strain is being taken up along the grain. And once it all fits, you knock it together with one of these and you're done. Because this style of furniture, you don't use glue, you don't use nails, you don't use fasteners, because they didn't have any. That area of the country, there's no hardware stores, there's nowhere to get that kind of stuff. So everything is made without fasteners. Okay, questions on that thus far?
Would they hyper dry the tenons, or tenons are also green?
I've just not seen that kind of construction. I mean, are you saying like a...
Just put the tenons by a wood stove or heated sand or something, so that the tenons, after assembly, absorb moisture and swell inside the mortise.
Yeah, the tables I've seen that are use a tenon construction are designed to be taken apart afterwards.
Okay.
So nothing is a tight fit.
Okay.
I've got one upstairs. It'd be something like, let's see if we can look at him. Yep, gonna have to take him out. Like this foot here, there's a keyway that's holding it. I knock that out and this drops out. Generally, you'd see tables done the same way because people might have to move and they've got to take the furniture apart to do that. So I'm just saying, I've not seen, this is not cabinet work. I've not seen those kind of joints.
Okay.
All right. So we finished the frame. Now it's time to do the top. And that's made out of this stuff, hickory bark, which is the inner bark of a hickory tree. So what you end up doing is go up in the hills and get a hickory tree, find a hickory tree about the size of your leg around, and hopefully it's fairly tall but not too tall. Hopefully it doesn't have too many branches for a fairly good stretch. Generally you cut it down chest high and haul it out of the woods, take it back. Then you have to get your draw knife out again, take off some of the outer bark. Well, you take off the outer bark and you have to take off some of the inner bark. Now, you actually might come downstairs. It might be helpful rather than me holding a camera and wandering around. So we're aiming for maybe a 1/16 of an inch thick. So, well, you can just kind of decide where we're at.
I'm just the photographer.
Yeah. Decide where we should be taking pictures of stuff.
Where are you? I don't know the storylines. I don't know quite what's going to be the best thing to be showing.
Okay,
But I'm thinking up here is going to be a better view.
probably. Okay. So, got our tree. Tree's still wet. We take the outer bark off. We take a guess on the inner bark. Then we get our knife out and cut it into strips like this. And then, so we do the long side first.
Well, you mark the edges of your strip and then you peel the thing up in between. Don't you cut a line on either side of the strip and then pull the bark up?
Nope.
Well, gee,
We
that was
just cut a
how I
straight-
did it.
We just cut a straight line, and now, and you can see this is the first one we ever did, so there's some variation in these sizes. Eventually we got better, and so we pull that bark up. I'm just saying, do we do the is the first loop the longest way?
Yes.
Okay, so go around all the way around, loop, 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 come around, and then we start the herringbone pattern. We go under 3, and then over 3, and under 3, and over 3, and come back, and the bottom gets done exactly the same way. Now, at some point, we run out, because your tree is maybe 20 feet, 25 feet long, which is the point where you have to do a buttonhole. All right.
That's hardened. Okay.
Yeah, it's hard. So that's when we take it, we cut a hole, and we cut a slit. And the new piece, we cut a little arrow. The new piece goes into the hole. How many times we've done this? Yeah. This stuff is dry, so it's kind of tough. Goes into the hole, makes a turn, and then it's locked on itself. Continue with our new piece. Now this one, usually you do the buttonholes on the underneath, and if you're real good, and we weren't, you do them underneath so that the buttonhole is hidden underneath one of these side pieces. Anyway, you keep doing that. And eventually, I don't know if this is going to be, if that's visible or not. Eventually you get to the end, flip it over, lock it back on itself. You do this kind of slack. If it's fresh hickory, you do it kind of slack because the hickory is pliable. It's still a live tree. And the next morning it's going to start to tighten up and tighten up, tighten up. And you end up with this really hard interlaced wood seat. There's a nice curvature to it. It flexes with your butt and it lasts a relatively long time. Now, after you've done this enough times, you can get lazy and talk to this guy.
Couldn't read that one photo.
And you can get hickory bark that they've already cut. Theirs is generally much a longer run without branches or holes or defects. And it's generally uniform thickness because they're running it through a machine that gets the dimensions right, and gets the thickness consistent. When you're doing it yourself, you're working blind. And so, meaning that you're scraping the outside, guessing how thick you're making it. And of course, the hickory tree, as you get close to the bottom, is thicker. The bark is thicker than it is at the top. So that's really a rough guess to get that right.
Neal, who's the maker of this?
I've bought that from Newberry and Sons Chairs in Red Boiling Springs, Tennessee. They sell coils of the hickory bark. I think it comes in 2 different widths. I know it's about $45 a coil, but I can't remember how big a coil is. How many feet?
Got you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but you do, you have to soak, when you will buy it dried like this, you have to soak it to get it pliable, kind of leather-like. Then you can do the weaving. But they're the only folks I have found to where I've been able to buy the bark from.
Yeah, once you're, in our experience is the way I've been taught to make a buttonhole with with fresh bark, you bend it in half and you cut it. Well, if it's dry, that's really tough. So one of the ways that I cheat is I found on the dried stuff, you just use a Forstner bit and it'll make a nice, clean, straight hole, and you don't have to fight with it near as much. I mean, it's not traditional, but you do have to be really aware that if you force this stuff to make a really strong turn, it may break on you. I guess the other caveat, why don't you grab this? I want to show them this thing.
Okay. You want to show them this?
Yes. Well, the other thing to think about in doing this is you don't want to make this stuff make a right turn. I think one of these we didn't do that, and we found it's much better to shave this off so it's making a gradual curve on these 2 sides, especially the dried stuff. If you make it do a right angle, it's not going to be happy and it won't last as long. Okay.
And I think the questions about the tenon earlier might have related to doing the chair as opposed to what you went off to on doing a Morrison tenon table, the chair or stool.
Yeah, but these aren't tenons, they're just straight holes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, not cabin joints. All right. So now, I guess I will note that there actually used to be an occupation called a bodger, which is somebody who would go into the woods and make one of these and then spend a week or so making chair parts. And they walk out of the woods, they'd leave this intact, walk out of the woods with chair parts and sell the chair parts. Now, why would we even want to know any of this stuff today? Well, one reason, for instance, is my wife's sister wanted some arms for a chair, and I had some walnut logs, and that's a fairly quick way to get from a log into something I can feed into a table saw. I can take a 6-inch log, split it in half. Now I've got a flat. I can cut the edges. Now I've got 2 flats. I can flip it over. Now I can end up with something that I can actually get into a table saw.
It's still wet.
Huh?
It's probably still wet.
No, it's dry. It's getting dry. Anything else interesting down here? Well, I guess it would be obvious, hopefully obvious, that well, if I hadn't embedded this thing, that using something like a fro, I need something that's a sacrificial wood thing to hit it with. I'd never hit that with a steel hammer, because that it's not going to hold up. It's going to mushroom if I do that. That's why we have this little pro. What are we doing on time? Not too bad. Not too bad. Okay. So I think I'm going to proceed upstairs. Well, more questions about this kind of work? Nope. All right. Leave him. I just leave him there. Yep.
Okay, so Neal's going to relocate.
Okay. So I had to take this out.
Okay.
I'll just mute him so he's not a problem for. Unmute. All right, he's unmuted. So that would be kind of that's the normal kind of joints that I've seen, where nothing is particularly tight. My caveat is the keyway is curved a little bit and it's angled a little bit such that it fits in place tightly. Let's see over here. I guess the only other thing, we'll see how this is framed. Okay. This is not traditional. This is a Jack Daniels chair that I've still got. We actually were able to keep the Jack Daniels logo. This is design. I just kind of winged from a picture and said, okay, I can make this. And I happen to have a barrel, a Jack Daniels barrel. Things to think about in making this is that every piece is curved in every dimension. So this piece is curved this way, and the inside is curved that way, and that's curved that way, so that every last joint, there's no joint that's at a right angle. Every joint is somewhat curved. Couple things, and actually, interestingly, that means that here, this part is curved this way, that part is curved that way, so they don't have much joining surface. Well, that's a really good reason to pull out the draw knife and flatten this part, flatten this side out, flatten that side out, such we actually have some joining surfaces. The other thing I discovered is liquid nails construction adhesive. That stuff will bond, they said, with a 3/16 gap. It'll certainly bond with an eighth of an inch gap. So things don't have to be really, really perfect. It's the other trick we discovered, or we made up to create this, was had a block of plastic drilled for the dowel such that no matter what the angle was, I could hold the piece of plastic against it, the block, and I could drill the same angle in both pieces and ended up oriented the same way. Oh yeah, this is mostly, almost all of these are dowel joints. The major joints are double dowels all the way around. I think there's screws, yeah, there's screws underneath. But dowels and wood glue. I think that's all I got for the moment. So let me just unmute, let me mute this one.
We'll find out. Okay, I'm back up. Tablet's muted.
Neal, can you talk a little bit about the stool that's behind you, kind of further back? What's the construction on that like? So, nope, not that one. The one in front of you now. Nope. That's the one. Yeah. What's the construction on this one like? Oh, there's. I see. Okay.
That's pretty straight up. Curved piece, doweled out. You know. Yep. Nothing terribly dramatic.
Yeah, I believe that was a flea market stool that I picked up so I could do the hickory bark seat on.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
My husband will attest to the fact that I really enjoy doing the hickory bark weaving.
Wow. And how long do you soak the bark when you get it dry?
The directions that they send with it say 10 minutes, and I have found that's not enough. I usually put it in fairly hot water for at least a half hour.
Okay. I would have thought overnight, but half hour is enough for it to be usable?
I mean, it's got to be bendable. You know, if you can get the kind of bend you need to go around one of the ends, then you're good. You do have to be careful too, because there's a top and a bottom to it. So
Right.
you want to make sure you get it positioned right, or you'll get a lot of like splintery hairs on the surface. You want to make sure that's the underside. You also, when you're piecing pieces together, you want to be sure you don't mix that up. And what else? I was going to say something else about piecing it. Yeah, other than always trying to do your piecing on the bottom and, you know, look at the pattern to see if you can actually bury it. Lots of times they'll shorten a piece a little bit so that you can choose where the joint is going to fall.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, we probably didn't note. You can see, well, let's see.
You could
Where
use
is he?
the other camera.
I can see. Probably not perfectly level. This is probably one of the earlier ones. So as you're weaving, you can take a piece of wood and knock these down to try to get them really tight. So as you go, you pick up the slack, and as you get closer to the end, it's harder and harder to get room to work. That just really makes it a little bit neater. This one's a little bit off center.
Well, you do want to get it real tight when it's wet and you're weaving, because it's going to shrink a little as it dries. So that if it's kind of a lot of gap when it's still workable, it's probably not going to be as tight and neat looking as you want in the long run.
Yeah. Actually, I'm looking at this one. This is one that we cut the tree, and this stuff is this is thicker than the stuff we bought.
Mm-hmm.
Because this one just sounds like a drum. But I don't know. I guess we've cut 5 or 6 ourselves, and after that, you've had that experience. You say, okay, good. I don't have to do that anymore.
How many feet do you think goes into one seat?
I'm
Okay.
trying to think. We've gotten
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 that way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 13 that way.
doubled.
Double it. This is 12 by 18. Well, yeah, and if you are, how long of a run do you get? If it's your own tree, how likely are you to hit a branch or hit a little offshoot that you have to work around, or you have to splice? And if you do have a splice, as Pat says, let's say you run out right here. Well, that means you're going to want to cut it back here because you want the buttonhole on the back side.
Yeah.
So now you've lost a foot potentially. So yeah, there have been weeks at up there when we were working on something and we had to get a second tree. We thought one tree was enough, and nope, it wasn't. But
I mean, I can look up how much was in a coil, and it seems like we would get, about a seat and a half out of whatever the Newberry guys sent as a coil. Now, when they send a coil, it's not exactly one run. Sometimes it'll be maybe 4 runs.
Right, right.
And actually, it's also helpful when you're weaving to have an assistant, because we would weave, we'd be in the garage and one of us would be taking the end all the way out into the driveway and doubling back in, because you got to keep you don't want it to twist.
Right.
And it's really annoying if once you get it all kind of mostly woven in and realize you twisted it and have to take it apart and refeed it again. And I mean, there's different patterns too. I kind of learned this herringbone where you start out with, either under 3, over 3, and then the next row you go over 1, under, so that it steps
Yep.
in. You keep reducing that and then start over again. I think it makes a nice looking pattern.
How long does it take you to do one seat?
With the bought bark, maybe 3 hours?
no,
2 hours?
hour and a half.
Well, depends on how big the seed is. All right. So somewhere between an hour and, I say hour and a half to 2 hours for us.
No way. Wow, that's really fast. You guys are
Well, how many buttonholes do you have to do?
right.
Yeah. With the long runs that we get when we buy it, that makes a big difference in how long it takes. If you've got a lot of short runs, you're doing a lot of piecing, a lot of buttonholes, that can take a lot longer. And I think some of the first ones we did we took a lot longer on too.
I'm gonna walk downstairs and show you the one that I did in hickory bark, but that took me a whole day.
Is that including cutting the tree?
No. And actually, I took a Brian Boggs chair class. He's from Kentucky. He's from Berea, and he's now in Asheville, but he doesn't teach anymore, so his student teaches. So his student was my teacher, and he's prepping the bark, but this chair does not have a rectangular seat. Okay, I don't know if you can see it now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So because the seat is narrower in the back than in the front, the good thing about using hickory bark is that we can cut it a little bit narrower in the back.
Yeah.
So we don't have to, because if you use something much more set, so this is 5/8 shaker tape, and this I have to add filler strips, yeah. But with hickory bark, I don't have to, and I can just cut it.
You just shave the back.
That's right. Yeah. So that, I mean, that's an additional thing that was taking time. But after doing one seat in hickory bark, I decided that I'm good with shaker tape.
I did a child's chair in some kind of reed, and it was the taper from front to back was significant.
Yeah.
What I wound up doing was I did a rung around, and then I did an extra loop in the front, and then another rung, so that the front was actually spaced out to get the fit pattern.
I've seen people do that with Danish cord. It's the same thing. I've never used reed, but I hear it's very light material. People who build chairs that are under 6 pounds, they use reed.
I regret having done that, and I've contemplating taking it apart because someone I think me leaned on it and it snapped the reed, so it's kind of not in the best shape now. And
this is the latest chair that I built. This one has a solid seat. It's not going to snap.
yeah.
It's a different type.
It doesn't flex with your butt either.
What's that?
Doesn't flex with your butt either.
It does not flex, but it has a scoop. It has a scooped seat.
Yeah.
So this one actually, I've built quite a few types, but this one is probably the most comfortable of the side chair.
Now, do you use the lathe for your back pieces and all?
I use the lathe for the posts and the legs and the stretchers, but these pieces are all from a log and then shaped with a drawn off and spoke shape. And so is the top piece, the crest. This chair was designed to be made predominantly with a draw knife. It's called the democratic chair, as in accessible to all. So the guy who designed it, Curtis Buchanan, designed it so that people don't have to buy a lathe, don't have to buy expensive tools.
I think you may have more chairs than we do. I thought we had kind of hit our limit. Maybe we can go further.
I have calculated that my house can easily support 18 chairs.
There you go.
But that includes rockers and dining chairs, and yeah, you guys can definitely have plenty of space. Don't stop.
More chairs.
Yeah, and once you're out of space on the floor, you can always hang them on the wall,
I've seen
like
that
the Shakers
happen.
did.
Yeah, I've seen that.
The folk week at Heinemann, there's woodworking, there's a lot of musical instrument classes, and it used to be every year there'd be some cardiologist or surgeon who'd come and decide he's going to make one of the chairs like yours or the bent Windsor chair, and you just know it's a week. It's going to turn out badly. They're working all day.
Yeah.
To draw a knife, like you just one little slip in, whoops, You just ruined that piece. You get to go
That's the character of it, right?
back to the drawing board. Well, yes, we've tried to stick with something you can get done in a week, but still have time for everything else and not, not hurt yourself, not drive yourself crazy.
Right. Excellent. Thank you so much for the information, guys. You might convince me to go back to the hickory bark.
Well, if it's the thick stuff, that is one tough seat.
Yeah.
I've seen there are chairs up at the settlement school that have been in use, and that bark is just it's just butts have smoothed it out. It is
Oh, yeah.
perfectly smooth.
One of the reasons I don't like it is this sound.
You just gotta have
Every time I sit on it, it makes the sound.
Yep.
And shaker tape, it has a 2-inch cushion in it. It's soft, but I completely agree with you. It's much more natural material. Just the fact that I cannot make shaker tape myself.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, I can make hickory bark.
Theoretically, yeah.
Theoretically, yes. No, I've heard people talk about doing it, just like you guys said. I mean, if you've harvested enough for 6 chairs, that's kudos. Usually people do it once.
Well,
And
that
that's
was
it.
6 different years.
That's right. And I'm talking about
One year,
once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
one year we did 2 trees.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, well, especially if you're going up, you got to go up into the hills to find it, and no matter where the tree is, once you cut it, when it goes downhill, it's going to go through every poison ivy patch.
Oh yeah. No, see, I'm out. I'm so allergic to poison ivy. I can't even comprehend harvesting it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, appreciate your time. We will definitely see you around. We are going to be done 1 minute early.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hang in there.
Bye. And let's end recording. Yep. Yes.